An actor escorted off the Paramount lot mid-shoot. Cameras still rolling. Crew silent. It wasn't part of a script, yet it felt like the kind of twist Matlock would write for itself. Justice, accusation, shock. Except this time, it wasn't fiction. By the next morning, headlines were everywhere. A rising star, a sudden firing, and a question that no one on set wanted to ask out loud. What really happened behind those studio doors? For fans of CBS's hit legal drama Matlock, it was like watching their favorite courtroom suddenly move off-screen. And at the center of the storm was Leah Lewis, the young actress whose calm silence was about to break in the most unexpected way. Because when she finally spoke, it wasn't through lawyers or press releases or interviews. It was through one quiet message to her fans. A message that carried the weight of everything left unsaid. They say every courtroom has its secrets, but no one expected the biggest scandal from Matlock to unfold off-screen. A leading man escorted off the Paramount lot. Cameras frozen mid-scene, crew whispering in disbelief. And at the center of it all, Leah Lewis. Reports claimed her co-star David Del Rio had been fired over a serious allegation, one that shocked the entire set and sent Hollywood reeling. Overnight, the hit legal drama turned into its own real-life case file, complete with rumors, silence, and a single Instagram post that changed everything. Because when Leah finally broke her silence, she didn't name names or relive the chaos. She said just 6 words. We're moving forward in love and strength. And somehow, those words hit harder than any statement CBS could ever release. It all unraveled faster than anyone expected. September 26th, a day that began like any other on the Matlock set. Lights up, scripts in hand, the cast preparing for another episode of the courtroom drama America had just started to love again. But by nightfall, whispers had already started spreading. Whispers about something that had happened behind a closed trailer door. By October 2nd, those whispers turned into a formal report. And within hours, David Del Rio, once one of the show's rising stars, was gone. Not just suspended, not quietly written out. Later, fired. Escorted off the Paramount lot that very same day. Sources say it wasn't a call from HR that sealed. It was executive producer Eric Christian, Olsen himself, who walked Del Rio off the set. No press, no drama, just silence, tension, and the echo of footsteps that would mark the end of his time on Matlock. CBS Studios moved quickly. They confirmed his exit, but offered no details. No statement on the investigation, no denial. Just a short line that spoke volumes. David Del Rio has departed the series. And yet, as one career ended in real time, the cameras never stopped rolling. The production carried on. Scripts were rewritten overnight, scenes adjusted, and Del Rio's character, Billy Martinez, quietly erased from the future of the show. Because in Hollywood, the show doesn't stop for anyone. Not even when the story behind the story is darker than anything ever written for TV. When Leah Lewis finally spoke, she didn't release a statement through her agent. She didn't sit down for an interview or call out names. She simply posted a picture. Her and her mother, smiling softly, sunlight pouring through the window. The caption was short, almost whisper-like. Mom is here. We're moving forward in love and strength. 16 words. No names, no details. But somehow, those 16 words said everything. The message wasn't about what had happened. It was about what would happen next. About healing. About standing tall without feeding the fire. And in an industry built on noise, that silence hit differently. Within minutes, her story started circulating. Screenshots, retweets, news alerts. The hashtag #CKaun, We Stand With Leah, trended across Twitter and Instagram as fans flooded her comments with hearts, prayers, and messages of support. Even her co-stars, though publicly quiet, started quietly liking her post. A small digital nod that said, "We see you. We're with you." There was no bitterness in her tone, no anger, no cryptic messages, just calm, grace, a kind of resilience that doesn't shout, it glows. And for many watching from the outside, it felt like the moment the storm stopped spinning, even if just for a second. Because in a world obsessed with scandals and statements, Leah Lewis reminded Hollywood of something it rarely sees anymore: quiet strength on set. Matlock had always felt like a safe space, a rare mix of classic TV nostalgia and modern energy. Kathy Bates led the charge as the sharp, witty attorney whose every case seemed to restore a bit of faith in justice. Around her, a cast of young associates, Leah Lewis among them, gave the show its heartbeat. They laughed between takes, shared meals, swapped stories about the long days and longer scripts. It was a family, or at least it felt that way. That's why the silence hit so hard. When word spread that David Del Rio had been suddenly escorted off the lot, it didn't feel real. Not here. Not on a show built around truth, fairness, and moral clarity. The irony was impossible to ignore. A legal drama now shadowed by an off-screen investigation that no one could talk about. Crew members reportedly learned what happened the same way the rest of the world did, through breaking headlines. One moment, they were adjusting camera angles and prepping the next courtroom scene. The next, they were staring at their phones, reading that one of their own was gone. Just like that. Behind the bright studio lights, the mood shifted overnight. Scripts were rewritten, call sheets revised, storylines reshaped to fill the gap Del Rio left behind. And while the show's fictional lawyers continued fighting for justice on-screen, off-screen, everyone was just trying to make sense of what justice even meant anymore. Because when a show about truth suddenly faces its own uncomfortable one, that's when fiction stops feeling like fiction at all. By the time CBS executives were alerted, the clock had already started ticking. Hollywood's unofficial rule is simple: control the story before the story controls you. And in this case, CBS moved fast. An internal probe was launched within hours of the report landing on their desks. Interviews were conducted quietly, legal teams mobilized, and the network's public relations department began what insiders called a containment operation. The goal wasn't just truth, it was timing. Protect the cast, protect the production, and above all, keep the cameras rolling. Within 24 hours, David Del Rio's name was scrubbed from upcoming call sheets. Storyboards were pulled down, rewritten overnight. Entire arcs involving his character, Billy Martinez, a role that had been set for major development in Season 2, were erased with a few keystrokes. What had once been a planned friendship-romance storyline was now a ghost in the scripts, gone without explanation. And yet, somehow, production never stopped. Episodes kept filming. Studio lights stayed on. Crew members say there was an unspoken urgency in the air. A quiet agreement that if they kept moving, maybe the show could survive the fallout. CBS released no detailed statement, only confirming Del Rio's departure. But sources later revealed that the network's upcoming pre-planned hiatus, originally meant for October and November, would now serve another purpose: a pause, a reset. A way for everyone to breathe, rewrite, and move forward without officially saying why. It was the kind of behind-the-scenes damage control that only a major studio could pull off. Silent, precise, and timed to the second. Because in a business built on illusion, CBS understood one thing better than anyone else. Sometimes the calmest press release hides the loudest chaos. For Leah Lewis, Matlock wasn't just another role. It was her breakout moment. A primetime platform opposite Kathy Bates, her name finally in the opening credits of a major network show. And just like that, everything around her changed. Overnight, she went from being the rising star to the woman at the center of Hollywood's latest scandal. But here's what stood out. She didn't let the narrative consume her. Casting directors quietly noted her composure. Brand partners admired how she never weaponized the story for attention. What could have been a career-defining crisis instead became a character-defining moment. The industry was watching, and what they saw was grace under pressure. For David Del Rio, the picture couldn't be more different. His team went silent. Representation offered no statements. Future projects paused indefinitely. It was as if his name had been locked in digital amber, suspended between denial and disappearance. In a town that feeds on momentum, silence can be more fatal than scandal. The bigger conversation, though, stretched far beyond Matlock. Commentators began calling it Me Too 2.0, a new era where studios act first and explain later, where reputations are rewritten before the public even sees the paperwork. To some, it was accountability in motion. To others, it was trial by headlines. Online, the debate split sharply. One side said CBS had done what Hollywood rarely does, protect a woman's safety without hesitation. The other warned that acting too quickly could destroy a man's career before evidence ever reaches daylight. Both sides had their believers. Both had their outrage. And somewhere in between stood Leah, quiet but steady, refusing to be defined by the noise around her. Because while fans argued about justice, she was already showing them what strength really looks like. Moving forward, one silent post at a time. Only a few weeks before the headlines hit, Matlock showrunner Jenny Snyder-Urman had been full of excitement. In interviews, she'd described the growing chemistry between Leah Lewis's character, Sarah Franklin, and David Del Rio's Billy Martinez, calling their connection one of the emotional cores of the second season. They challenge each other, they balance each other, she'd said. It's a friendship that surprises them both. No one could have guessed how quickly those words would age. After Del Rio's sudden firing, that entire storyline had to be dismantled. Episodes already shot became creative minefields. Every shared glance, every lingering moment between Sarah and Billy now carried an entirely different weight. Editors and writers scrambled to reshape scenes, trim dialogue, and shift emotional beats so the show could move forward without reopening wounds. It became an eerie reflection of Matlock's own premise. A story about truth, justice, and what happens when the facts change everything. Only this time, the rewrite wasn't just for television. It was real. Art had imitated life, and then life came back and rewrote the art. CBS confirmed that the episodes filmed before the incident would still air, though fans watching now will see them through a different lens, one tinted by everything that happened after the cameras stopped rolling. What once felt like a story of friendship and ambition now feels like a snapshot from a world that no longer exists. But still, the show continues. Scripts revised, storylines rebalanced, cast and crew finding new rhythms. Because in Hollywood, the lights never stay off for long. The cameras roll on, even when the story has changed forever. In the end, Leah Lewis said it best herself. Keyword: strength. Two words that outlasted every headline, every rumor, every whisper from behind the studio gates. When a moment like this hits a production, trust becomes fragile. Between actors, between the crew, even between the people who make the rules. But in the weeks that followed, those who worked beside her said something quietly remarkable. Leah never stopped showing up, never let the tension rewrite her warmth. On set, she carried herself with the same calm presence she showed online. Not as the victim of a story, but as its steady center. And maybe that's what this whole ordeal revealed. That strength isn't loud. It doesn't need microphones or statements. Sometimes, it's just showing up the next morning when the world expects you to hide. Now, as Matlock moves on, scripts rewritten, scenes reshot, cameras rolling again, the message that remains isn't about scandal. It's about resilience, about the people who keep going when the lights dim, who rebuild trust when the spotlight burns too hot. Because sometimes, The real courtroom drama isn't scripted. And the verdict? Is strength? What do you think? Is Hollywood finally learning how to balance accountability with compassion?